Welcome to the StarCraft Remastered, Then and Now panel.
The reason we remastered StarCraft is for the community that continues to love and engage and play day in and day out.
Welcome to GG Together!
StarCraft Brood War is still considered by many to be one of the best real-time strategy games ever made.
We really had no idea that it was going to turn into this huge global esport.
Is this army big enough? A good storm goes down!
We're remastering StarCraft because it still has a huge following. There's so many players out there.
Blizzard set out to make awesome games that bring people together. We do this for love of the community. We are part of it. We hope you enjoy it.
What is up, BlizzCon? Now, before we begin, it's very important you know my bias. StarCraft Brood War is the greatest video game that has ever been made. Who's with me? Excellent. What a good audience. This is the StarCraft Then and Now panel, where we're going to talk about the history of how StarCraft and Brood War were made, and of course talk about the remaster. Here joining me on stage, we have Bob Fitch, the lead engineer on the original StarCraft Brood War. We got Colin Murray, an SC engineer on the original. Samwise Didier, the original art director. Well, you can't do it for him and not for everyone else, so let's just hype it up. Guys, Bob Fitch. Let me hear it for Colin Murray. Oh. You already did Sam, so he's good. We have Brian Sousa, both an artist on the original and the lead for the remaster. I'm very excited to read your full title. It's Rob Breidenbecker, the VP of Technology Strategy and Planning, comma, Technology Strategy. What a title! Look at that. We have Pete Stillwell, the lead producer on StarCraft Remaster. And the man whose videos on Twitter give you all the juicy updates, Grant Davies, lead engineer for the StarCraft Remaster. Now, I want to come all the way back to the beginning, where I understand that StarCraft originally was a collaborative project between you guys and LucasArts. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so originally started off, we were in talks with LucasArts to do a Star Wars RTS. Allegedly, talks fell apart somehow, but we decided to keep working on what we thought was a great idea and just build our own license.
Yeah, I always thought that how cool it would be to work with Star Wars, right? But then I was thinking, well, everything's already sort of been designed. What are we going to do other than recreate what someone else made? So that we did our own thing, I think, was way cooler, because we wouldn't probably be here today if we had done the Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, you actually talked a little bit, backstage about how, like, if you're working with Superman, he's like not allowed to kick. If you're working with another IP, there's like a lot of rules and rigidity there because that's the established IP. So
yeah, they're other people's creations, so we have to follow their rules. But if we're creating our own, we can do whatever the hell we want.
So what was whatever the hell you want? What happened? Where did the ideas come from?
Well, I mean, a lot of the science fiction genre, comic books, all that, we've all been fans of these genres since we were kids. So all these different artists and programmers, designers that came from different parts of California were bringing in all these influences, and that is a gigantic gumbo of sci-fi knowledge right there. So what we did is we picked sort of the coolest elements of the batch. You know, we wanted to have, of course, the humans, but we did not want galactic good guys like Star Trek. So we made ours surly space cowboys that were prisoners. You know, that's our Blizzard version of it.
A little grungier, a little dirtier.
Yeah, that's I guess our ideal human existence in the future for Blizzard. Yeah, we don't
aspire to be Terrans down the line. Or some of the ideas that were coming in, yeah.
No, go ahead, guys.
You
Share.
can see it from movies like Alien or Starship Troopers, and ideas would come from all over the place. The carrier with the shuttles or the little interceptors coming out of the carrier, that's actually Battlestar Galactica, just the Vipers coming out.
Yeah.
The laser, when you have the ghost that's going to shoot the nuke, that comes out of a scene from Clear and Present Danger, when there was this guy that was targeting a laser so that a missile could come down and hit a drug compound and blow everybody up. So we get ideas from all over the place.
Cloaking from Predator.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And I'm curious in terms of assembling those ideas. I mean, what was the team like at the time? Was there a lead that was the person who would clear which ideas made it or not, or was it just sort of like, you know, the melting pot? Everyone was throwing in ideas.
It was basically us three, right?
Pot.
It was us three.
Yeah, actually.
And Seuss was a little bit.
I did a little bit.
Yeah.
No, this was a team that had tons of people. So
we did. One of the big things that I notice now versus working back then is Blizzard was a way different company about how everything was made. Sammy kind of pointed out that maybe it was just me, but I really didn't have like a lot of connection with the design team or the programming team. It was like, you're an artist, you're kind of in your little art cubicle, you're doing your work, and you know, just I did my work and then I would hand it off to somebody else, and then I was on to the next thing. I didn't even bother like seeing how it actually got into the game or what it looked like. It was just always kind of working to the next item.
you were the one though that came up with the Protoss armor, right? With the golden.
The Protoss with
not
the
the golden
big
arches. Don't say that. Golden arcs.
arcs around his back. Yeah.
I believe that was you, right?
That was me, yeah. So, my claim to fame. And one of the things that we kind of wanted to do in the remaster, but just because of keeping it in line with the original, is the SCV was actually supposed to transform into like a little jet, and it would fly around, and then it would transform back into a robot while it was working. Yeah. And in the end, we're like, too many frames, cut it. So
what was that? 3?
Yeah,
3 frames.
Probably like 3 extra frames. So
You just gave him 60 hit points and called it a day.
yeah, I was like, okay, whatever. But if you look at it, like even now, like when we worked on the remaster, we made sure to keep it in line. It has a little jet cockpit on it still, and it's got the jets on the back, and you can imagine what it looked like as a Veritech fighter from some other property.
I'm curious, like, what was the projects that you were coming out of right before you were starting into StarCraft Remastered? Or excuse me, StarCraft, the original.
Shattered Nations.
Yeah, so Bob and Brian and I were working on it was a Civilization-style game that never got shipped.
It was a post-apocalyptic, it looked sort of like Civilization, where you have that top-down, you're looking at your units, but it was in real time, and that was going to be our thing. It's like, oh, we're a real-time company now, we're going to have real-time Civ, and the units would move around and stuff. And then that got cut short when they came back and said, all right, we know we want to do our own thing, and this Lucas thing fell through. Let's make up our own new IP, StarCraft, and ideas come in.
And then you just did.
Just did, yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, Warcraft
It's easy.
too. Yeah, no, you whipped up an RTS. We'll get to the development story soon. So you made Warcraft II, so there was obviously that RTS pedigree there. What were some of the big differences that you wanted to do going from Warcraft II to StarCraft?
Oh, geez, big
Well, we
difference.
definitely wanted to have more than 2 identical races, so we
Yeah,
wanted at least 3.
Warcraft was different, the Ogre Age.
we
and-
talked
Yeah,
about
they had a
Totally
spell.
different.
Orcs were
Grunt,
better,
there was a footman.
and also humans were in the game, yeah.
So we wanted to make at least 3 races and make them as different as possible in their strategies. That was the primary goal.
I was really in favor of that. I had done the AI for Warcraft and Warcraft II, and it was really hard to do the balancing of it because the 2 sides were the same. It was sort of like chess where you have black pieces and white pieces, and they all kind of matched up. And if there were little differences, the balance was really hard to do. So ironically, by having 3 completely different races, it was easier to balance because you didn't have to make things match as much.
Well, I want to step into the development and ask a little bit about what, it was like trying to do those types of balances, because I think that many people know about how just robust the competitive play is in StarCraft. It's sort of heralded as a game that hasn't been touched in 2 decades. And I assume it's because you had everything completely perfectly planned in development.
Oh, yeah.
The top strategist. What was that like?
We didn't even have to make any changes. It just sort of fell out, and there it was. Yeah, no, it was fine.
Nailed it.
I mean, how did you go about trying to balance these 3 completely different races?
Well, we took our best players in the company, and we just matched them up and saw what they did. But then when we went to beta and realized how much better some people were around the world, we would create a special map that would have regular starting locations for the 2 players, and then a third starting location that didn't have anything there other than a starting location, so you could put a Terran and then lift off, fly into the corner, and then observe. So somebody from Copenhagen is playing someone from Korea, and they're awesome players, and so you get to see what they're doing and balance based on that. And so we pretty much just did that over and over and over again.
Until it just felt right?
Until it felt right, yeah.
Well, what was the development like? I mean, how many people worked on the original StarCraft?
It was about 20.
Yeah, we had about
20,
25, yeah, 25 people.
Was it a smooth development? Were there interesting bumps? This is your time to tell us the juicy stories.
We were in the final stretch for about a year, it felt like, right?
Yeah, it started in September,
Just another
and it
2 more
ended in
weeks.
March, and it was every hour of the day. Some people were sleeping in the office.
We were continually building press demos after press demo after press demo, and
Just gonna ignore the Warcraft in space that we started.
No, let's talk about Warcraft in space, because that's like the original screenshot that a lot of people first got the chance to see StarCraft.
Screenshots out there. Of,
Yeah, that's what started the crunch.
Our initial view of StarCraft, and
E3 1996.
yeah, definitely improved, because we took a little hiatus. We came back from E3, and the Diablo game we're still working on, so we kind of shut down all production on StarCraft, saying, let's get Diablo done, and then we can go back and focus on StarCraft and kind of react to what we had learned at the E3. So, but that was a great opportunity for us to, do Diablo and get that done, and then come back with a fresh mind. And we did it, we moved from all 2D artwork, which we're kind of heading towards, and then, taking our knowledge and just diving into 3D and using 3D.
That was still relatively new for us, too.
It was. It was the first game we did all in 3D.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we had seen another game showing at E3 that year. It was called Dominion. And they were all, by 7th level, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah,
And they had this nice 3D rendered look. They were also doing an RTS. And we realized, wow, that looks really cool. It really fits the sci-fi genre. And so we took that as our inspiration and came back and kind of made it our own.
Yeah, a lot of people think that like the first screenshots, now maybe my memory is foggy. I remember that we had very little time to do that.
Oh.
We sort of just started building in the engine that we had.
Yeah.
And then it was like,
we were just plugging
with
in
the
artwork
same exact engine and throwing in whatever we wanted, so.
The UI looked the same. We had all of our stuff on the left side. The mini map, your selection, everything was played on the right, because it was still I think it was 1024 by 768, or is that even too high?
220, 221, whatever it takes.
So yeah, like, and coming off of coming at E3 and seeing what other people have done, and we decided, well, let's move all of the stuff at the bottom, and we'll have the mini map and all of that. So.
Yeah. And you were talking also about so much of the development team was moving over to Diablo at that time. Was there anyone who was still working on StarCraft?
I think Bob was.
Probably just
I was the last one, actually. One by one, they just pulled the team away from me until I was the only person still working on StarCraft.
And what were you doing during that time?
Well, they had come up with all kinds of design ideas for units that the other engine couldn't handle, and so I just took advantage of that time in order to rework the basic guts of the engine to enable all the different ideas that they had. Like, we couldn't do turrets on top of units, so you couldn't have the body moving one way and the turret facing the other way. So we couldn't have done siege tanks, we couldn't have done Goliaths, for example. We didn't have a good way to shoot lots of missiles at the same time. All those little things are the stuff that I got the time because of Diablo in order to make.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the engine, I feel a responsibility to bring up the AI for the Dragoon.
Pathing.
The pathing for the Dragoon, because Dragoons are like shitty genies. You say go here, and they're like, well, you didn't tell me that I had to go in a straight line.
Independent.
Yeah.
Independent.
Yeah.
I remember reading in the Code of Honor blog that there were so many little fixes put into pathfinding because during that last stretch you were always 2 weeks from shipping. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the pathfinding because it's really interesting.
Yeah, actually, the pathfinding was done by a different engineer, so we can talk about him all we want.
That's great. No, this is
he's not here to defend himself.
Yeah, no,
This
we
is
got
good.
7 people on the panel. I think it was cut as the 8th.
Yeah.
That's really too bad.
So what do you want to know about?
Talk to me about the Dragoon, right?
Oh,
because I
the
know that a
Dragoon,
lot of the
yeah.
pathfinding stuff is really interesting.
Trying to find its way up ramps where they would jitter, or you try to stop a group of them together and they just are constantly moving. It all came down to the fact that we put bounding boxes to define the collision area based on the artwork. So if the artwork was big, the collision was big. If the artwork was small, the collision was small. And so their legs, because they do this step out and then in, it made them change sizes.
It's called walking. You know, you get bigger.
This thing that it's doing.
Crazy.
Wow. But, you know, leading up to that final stretch, what was life like in the office?
Oh,
Yeah, we were working
tired.
It was ha 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 ha.
The longest final
no
stretch
less
ever.
than 15-hour days, 7 days a week.
We had some stretches where
15-hour days, you took a lunch? Bastard.
there was a week I didn't leave the office. People brought food to the office and I didn't leave. I was probably pretty smelly now that I think about it by the end, but anyway, yeah, didn't leave. We had stuff to do.
Bob had a kid during it, too.
Yeah, my wife
Well,
was
Bob
pregnant.
didn't, but you know what I mean.
And
Bob gave birth to a child. It was a crazy development.
yeah, I get the call, you know, I got to go to the hospital and we're having the baby. And like, I still got to finish this one line. And then went to the hospital, took 15 hours break, went back to work. And my wife came, slept on the couch with the.
I clearly remember Bob's son sleeping on a towel next to his keyboard.
Yeah, actually, somebody told me they remembered that I had pulled the drawer out, put a towel in the drawer, and used it like a bassinet or something.
So it was safe.
Laid the baby in there,
Totally
and then just back to work.
It's a very thin line between clever parenting and concerning parenting.
Hey, he can't complain now. He's 20, he's in college. It's all good.
Yeah. And he's not going to be a newbie either. You're going to put him on StarCraft Remastered now.
Oh, he was on StarCraft when he was 4 years old.
Yeah. Wow. Again, responsible parenting. I love that. I want to ask one last question leading up to development about Operation Seawall, about the community that was really interested.
Can't wait any longer.
Yeah. Talk to me about that, about Operation Seawall.
What do you remember? I don't know. I didn't put it in.
Go ahead, Bob. Handle it.
Me?
Yeah, go, Bob. You're doing great.
Do it, Bob. You're killing it, man.
You got to make up for that 15 hours you took off to have the baby. Go.
Yeah.
I remember them being really eager to have it, coming by the office one time and holding signs outside going, "We can't wait any longer, give us StarCraft," believing that we had actually finished it and we just had it in a drawer and we were holding it to drum up
By the baby?
drama or something. Yeah, it's like, here's my kid and this one and here's StarCraft and I'm just kicking back, playing. Like, oh,
Yeah,
it's
they
fun.
thought the game was done and you were withholding it.
Yeah, they did.
Well, we were
Crazy. No.
supposed to have it done by end of year, right? And we ended up punting it until...
Yeah, in September when we started the crunch, we thought we were going to make it. It's like, okay, if we crunch, we can make it. It was November was the deadline, so you could
Yeah.
get it for Christmas.
Yeah.
And then we didn't make it. It's like, oh, but we're so close. We're in the home stretch. We can do this. So we just kept going, and that went into March.
And so the game finally releases. What did you do?
Slept.
Slept.
Got some time.
Well, because I mean, nowadays, anytime there's a Blizzard launch, there's a huge party and there's a big launch event.
Yeah,
You
we were just exhausted.
Yeah.
So
We didn't know what to do with ourselves.
We were
One thing I
noobs
do
back then.
remember is when it did come out, our publisher didn't send us any copies for us, but Fry's Electronics had a sale, and it was like $10 a piece. And we all just
had to
drove
buy
to
them.
Fry's and bought our own copies of the game we worked on. So
Yeah.
This is the coolest part with all these people. They remember the things that I don't, he remembers, and I remember something he didn't, so we're starting to fill in those years.
Collectively, you're one on-point panelist, yeah.
A little.
I'm sorry, a lot.
A lot.
A little, lot.
The thing was, I think the whole game took, what, 2.5 years?
2.5 years.
And people couldn't wait for 2.5 years? Like, nowadays, it's like,
Right?
how long do they have to wait for games? Back then, that was easy. 2.5 years?
WoW took 4.5.
Yeah. We had that in the drawer next to
Yeah,
the baby.
Yeah.
Well, and after we launched it, right, we still had, we'd already released Battle.net, right, with Diablo.
Right.
And so with StarCraft, when it came out, right, that was actually kind of, I mean, still the beginnings of us learning how to operate these games after we thought that they were done. And it was really like, that's when it began to really blow up for us, because we had folks playing it all around the world. And so the sleepless nights just didn't really end.
And we were awesome at StarCraft for about 2 weeks till everyone caught up and surpassed us, showed us what we didn't know.
Okay, listen, game hasn't launched yet, it's about to ship. What were the OP strategies that made you guys think that you were hot?
Well, the trickiest one, I didn't come up with this. Girl, Sharon Shellman, she would take all the Marines into a dropship, fly them behind your base, and drop them off. That was like groundbreaking.
In your peon line.
That seriously was the thing, and then that was like, oh my God, how do you defend against that? And nowadays, nobody really does that anymore because you just get knocked out. That was groundbreaking then.
Yeah. And Rob, I want to ask, after the game launched, there were several balance patches that happened, and Korea started to have a pro scene and professional players. What was your reaction as you're seeing StarCraft explode like this?
I mean, at the time, I was just more worried about making sure that the servers didn't fall down, because, I mean, it's no stranger to Blizzard, right? We underestimated the demand, and we actually, when we launched Diablo, we only had one Battle.net server, and it was actually located over here in the U.S. And along the process, we're iterating on our back-end tech. We ended up creating like 3 different gateways. One for Europe, one for North America, and then one over in Korea. And we really needed to have it largely for Korea alone, because we had so much utilization happening there. And it was crazy as well, because that was really the birth of the game room scene over in Korea, where basically, we thought like game rooms are going to be the traditional environment where, lug your computer over to your buddy's place and sit down and futz around with Ethernet connections and get a cool LAN party going on. Over in Korea, they had figured out, you know what, like, let's actually open up shops to where folks can come in, they can effectively rent those computers and play massive games of StarCraft. And that just swept a whole generation there. And it was unbelievable, like, seeing that light up.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know that Korea even had the government subsidize those types of businesses and a lot of the broadband stuff, just to make it like the most technologically focused city in the world, technologically focused country in the world. And Pete and Grant, you've been all the way at the far end there. I want to involve you, and I know we're about to talk about the remaster, but I got to know, what were you guys doing related to StarCraft during this period, during that 1998 to 2017 period?
That whole 20 years?
Were you guys?
You got about 2 minutes to sum it up, Grant. Ready, set, go.
Well, I can certainly talk about what I was doing when StarCraft launched the first time. I remember I just finished high school, so I had a lot of free time on my hands, and my friends and I would play a lot of StarCraft. I was always very terrible at it, but would keep coming back to it over the years and keep playing StarCraft. And everywhere I worked, StarCraft would always be one of the go-to games. You'd pull it out and you'd play it at lunchtime, or you'd play it after work. So, that was definitely one of the reasons that attracted me to Blizzard to come and work on StarCraft.
And when did you end up joining the team?
I joined the team kind of right at the start of the Remastered project, so around about 18 months ago, I think.
Right on. Pete, what about you? What were you doing? I mean, you're wearing a Warcraft 3 shirt. Just cover that up when you answer the question. It's the wrong game.
So, it all ties together, right? Warcraft 2, I watched a buddy play because my dad said the typewriter was good enough. And so we didn't have a family computer. And I took our lawnmower and started mowing all the neighbors' lawns.
With their permission, you didn't just start mowing lawns. I assume, for money, okay.
Yeah, until I could buy a computer. So I was lucky enough to like have that landing as StarCraft was coming out. Like it was really epic to be able to like have that type of goal. And then the next major hurdle for me was that we only had one phone connection and it was always in use. So I played very much a campaigner's lifestyle early on.
I completely forgot that, my mom would try to call someone. I'd be like, Mom, my big game hunters match is really important to me. So I want to know, how did the remaster come about? Because I even know up to 2007, 10, and so on that Brood War was heralded as just this. It was just right. Don't touch the balance, don't touch the game. That community always wanted to be timeless. Why remaster it?
Yeah, you know, it's we actually started down the process of just trying to figure out how do we download the game on our own websites because it was kind of buried somewhere in a Battle.net account, and then from there we looked at it and said, you know what, like everything before World of Warcraft that was connected to Battle.net was actually broken, right? In that it wasn't connected to our modern online community. And so as we started digging in under the hood, it was like, you know, how cool would it be if we took this game that is still being actively played by millions of folks around the world and connected into the modern Battle.net? But then on top of that, we said, you know, shit, like this looked fantastic back in 1998. You guys did an amazing job. But in 4x3 monitors with 640, 480 pixels where you had like 256 colors, of which I think we only used like
well, we
200.
We had to keep colors for the players, the player color,
right.
Team color. We had to keep colors for any of the waters.
Yeah.
You know, the animation was a cycling color, so it just kind of ran through like 4 or 5 colors. So anything that we kept a lot on the side for any animations that we would need that way. And so like our actual palette was even smaller than like the 256 that you would get.
Yeah. So we ended up basically starting to talk to folks, right? Really reaching out to the community. And asking them, hey, what if we were to go and introduce some simple like conveniences like widescreen support? And initially it was like, ooh, widescreen. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Don't break our game. And we're like,
whoa,
okay,
more than 12 units. Ooh,
right.
no, I only want to select 12 at a time.
But then the more that we talked to folks, the more they actually said, you know, actually widescreen, like it'd be kind of nice to not have, you know, stretchy stuff or have to play it in a window. Okay, you know, maybe that's okay, but just don't change any of the actual game. Okay, well, you know, we'll take a look at that. And so we went through the process of just like sizing up how difficult would it really be to do a remaster. And true to form, we said, oh, this will be a cakewalk. Well, it turns out we had lost all of the art. We basically had to go to the game itself and rip out of the Mopaks all of the assets that were in the shipping version of the game, and rebuild all the tool chains so we could get all the different angles, and then we could basically build a whole new pipeline, and then go and rebuild all the models again in 3D. And much to Brian's chagrin, we had to do all of the 80-odd thousand tiles for all of the different environments that are in the game, because each one of those was, you know, basically effectively hand fit, hand drawn, and there was an algorithm that would like put it together. But we didn't really know how that really worked. I mean, it was old code, right?
I can't
believe
believe
terrible.
that.
Some of the other things, being an artist back then, I'm sure it's because of our tight team, but we had units that were rendered at different angles, camera angles. So if you put some units or buildings together in the game, you'll notice that some of them they're a little off. It's because like the camera angle that it was rendered at was at a different angle, or the light is in a different place, so you have different highlights. For the same, you know, you put 4 buildings down, they all have different highlights, they all have different shadow angles, and you're like,
multiple
oh
suns.
Yeah, something. It's a magical world. But working with that, we didn't want to change any of the, you know, the silhouettes. We wanted everything to be instantly recognizable, so that, you know, if you just started coming back to it again, you're just like, this is what I remember, and so that's.
Yeah, one of the first points of feedback we got when we went to Korea and started to sit down with the pros and even folks in our own office there was that we must be able to recognize this game. The silhouettes are so important. Do not change a single animation. you know, the Dragoon's Walk, all of those things are must-haves. Like, you will change StarCraft and then break StarCraft as a result if you do any of that. So we went into it just knowing that we had to preserve gameplay itself, and then the things Rob was talking about to kind of extend the experience on those kind of secondary and tertiary layers where we could introduce modern systems and make a positive impact with Matchmaker or things to appeal to a new audience even.
And then as we went a little further with just the art up-resing, we, you know, in addition to all the tools, we actually had to be able to really look at the old and the new one-to-one. And so we plugged in basically this F5 functionality where you'd be able to just right there in client, hit the button, and it would flip back and forth between the old and the new. And we're like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. Like, maybe we should ship with this feature. And I'm pretty sure Grant looked at us in horror as the lead guy, because he's going, wait, hold on. So we're going to have to do every glue screen, old and new, and we're going to have F5, you know, actually persist throughout the entire thing. And I was like, yeah, you will. And honestly, one of the coolest moments is when you even see like the defeat screen, because I lose a lot. You hit F5 and it switches over, and you see the old version.
Yeah, we had so many bugs to do with it because of all those.
Worth it.
Exactly. I remember trying to convince Rob that we should not do F5 as a production thing. But he told a story, I think, that Mike had checked out the game, and he said, I love this F5 thing. Yeah. And from then on, we were doing F5.
That was usually the easiest way to get the guys to actually like really invest in something they didn't know about. Be like, well, Mike said it was really cool.
Well, and honestly, a lot of people didn't realize we'd done anything at first when you demo it. It's not until you hit F5 and put it back into SD that they'd be like, oh. And that's awesome that we did it right, or whatever you want to say, to kind of achieve that goal of the one-to-one.
Yeah.
But it's really just to be like, no, we did work. Trust us. Like, over the past year, we've actually done things, and
your
it's
memory
resulted
fills
in
in
this.
all of the little gaps. So like when people come to it and see the HD for the first time, they're like, it looks like StarCraft. And we're like, yeah, it does. But
press the button.
Yeah, like, this is how it actually is. And you push F5 and you're like, oh, okay. And then you can see like everything kind of just gets really pixelated.
And we actually, when we did the presentation internally, just to kind of get folks aligned and make sure it was something we wanted to ship and do, basically had an early version of the game where we brought in like this 70-inch 4K monitor, and on the screen we had the original StarCraft up and running, pillar boxed, and it was all pixelated, and I mean it was just huge, right? So everything looked like in real life, and we were talking, and everybody's staring at the screen, going like, "Is this the remastered version?"
Wow.
And you know, about 5 minutes in, it's like just press the damn button, and they press the button, and it unfolds into widescreen, and it brings out all the the new colors and the higher def units. And I think it was Browder immediately goes, "Oh, F yeah! Like we're absolutely doing this."
Yeah.
Good bit now.
Well, I know that there's a lot of sensitivity that players will feel even with the slightest changes. I mean, in terms of trying to recapture the art, I know that you were striving to get as true to the original form as possible. What was some of that iteration like, trying to get those units just right, or some of the things that people reacted to that surprised
I do know that when we first showed the pros and even our talking to our Korean office and the players, we kind of had them run through it, and they're like, well, this doesn't feel right on like the Zergling. So something about the Zergling, even though it was basically the same, it didn't feel right in the way that they had to like select it or whatever. So we actually went back and we're like, okay, let's scale it up a little bit, make sure that this is right. And so we did that all along the way. We made sure that whatever we changed, whatever we added, we made sure it was right with the players. So
yeah. I also remember early on, one of the first moments, you actually went to Sammy and said, "What the hell is this little X in the middle of the turret?"
There's a person in the turret.
Yeah.
Person in the missile.
And he's like, "It's the guy's helmet." And it's, "Oh yeah, of course it is. Those 4 pixels are obviously a guy's helmet, Sammy."
Well, if you go in Heroes of the Storm now, you can actually see our little dude in the turrets a lot more clearer.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was actually a dude that just sat there and
spinning.
spun around
all day.
It's like, ooh.
You know, you were talking about how you went to a lot of the pros, asked them their feedback, and the output of that was, don't touch the game, you got to leave it as much the same as possible. I mean, did you propose things like infinite unit selection or multiple building selection, or did you not even broach the subject? Or did they preempt and say, by the way, don't do this?
Yeah, that was essentially it. Like, we went into the room as the bad guy who was going to break their game, so they were very forward about, like, don't do X, Y, and Z. And then there was the other things like Rob was talking about where we thought, like, oh, we could never do widescreen because that'll change the game, right? And they're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. And we're like, really? Like,
talk more about that.
So quickly? Like, how do you know instantly it doesn't matter? And then, you know, they break down, like, well, your mouse has got to travel further. There's actually more things demanding my attention, my mini-maps further away, whatever. Like, they were just like, it just doesn't matter. Ultimately, StarCraft boils down to, are you making the right decisions, and am I do them faster and more accurately than you?
Yeah.
And seeing a little bit more real estate doesn't affect that.
Well, I know that there's a lot of bugs in the gameplay that are actually like
Not
essential.
a lot of bugs.
No, I know they're called bugs.
There's no bugs.
Zerg, not bugs.
Guys, I'm thrilled to announce there are no bugs in StarCraft. Yes.
We did it!
Done. One of my favorite obvious and deliberate features in StarCraft 1 is that if you have units that are close together and you click them somewhere, they move in formation. But if they're really far apart and you click somewhere, they cluster up. So that way, you know, everything, you don't have a huge formation moving somewhere. And this is why pros will have 11 Mutalisks and 1 Overlord on the other side of the map, so all the Mutalisks stay clustered and clumped together to micro more easily. And I'm curious, Grant, in building the remaster, were there features like this that you had to ensure that you preserved? Did you accidentally fix any of these behaviors?
Yeah, there were a couple of them actually. I remember one in particular that stands out. There's a thing in StarCraft where if you're holding down the mouse and selecting a bunch of units, it will ignore keyboard inputs, so you can't use the hotkeys to move attack or select your hotkey groups. And yeah, we accidentally fixed this when we were doing some input changes in 1.18 earlier in the year. And we didn't realize we'd fixed it or changed it, I guess, if you want to call it that. And it was only when people in the forum started saying, hey, this is not how it ever was. You guys need to put it back to how it was. So then we went back and we looked at the original code. We realized that it was like that, and we put it back to how it was.
Yeah. And then everyone was like, oh, good, good. It's not reading this input. Oh, phew.
Well, but then now we have on the forums people saying, well, the inputs don't work right because now you can't press, they don't respond, the keys don't respond sometimes when you're selecting a unit. That's how it's supposed to be. So it is a difficult balancing act where, you know, the original was different and you don't want to fix that. So I think we have to take baby steps if we ever want to change those kind of things.
Yeah. And your actions per minute being tied to the refresh rate was one that we lucked into as well. You know, the game was running at 2,000 frames a second, something absurdly high, melting computers, using up battery life. So we put in a cap of 200 APM because that seems, or 200 frames per second because that seems pretty reasonable. But I don't know if when you're watching pro streams where you'll see them shaking their mouse violently, that's because the mouse cursor moving across the screen causes a refresh. So they're shaking their mouse violently to increase the refresh rate because then it allows their APM to go up at a similar tick. So if they need 300-400 APM, they need 300 or 400 refreshes. And we said, here's 200. And they said, why are half of my moves being ignored? And then we had to figure out why. Like, there's just so many of those things where because we didn't write the code initially and maybe the best comments ever weren't left, it might have taken a little while to figure it out.
We don't have anyone who works on your code here.
Sorry, can we get the bus off the stage? That's my bad.
Well, talk to me about what it was like to finally release StarCraft Remastered.
I mean, it was awesome. We did a launch event in BlizzCon on the beach. I think we estimated or scheduled that we'd have 5,000 people there, and then apparently 10,000 people turned up on the beach, and they were all around. Like you can see the photos from the overhead photos, and they're kind of almost in the water on the beach as well. I think 500,000 people watched it live.
Yeah.
Right? So I mean, it was an awesome reception, and for me, I think the matchmaker. I probably shouldn't say this, but the matchmaker kind of surprised me by how much it was embraced because. You know, so many people have been playing StarCraft in one way for 20 years. I kind of thought, oh, well, this is a new feature. It might take people a while to get used to it. But
right.
like people jump right in. I haven't checked the stats recently, but after a couple of weeks, I know that there were millions of matches made, and it was just awesome to see so many people jumping into that matchmaker.
Yeah, I think a healthy amount of the remastered team is at Blizzard because of StarCraft. So we were kind of given this sacred trust to bring it into a new light and restore it and make it playable and make it discoverable for a new generation. And like, I can't tell you how impactful that was and how much we enjoyed being given that honor. And so to get it out there was, like Grant was saying, like there was a lot of kind of sighs of relief that the pitchforks and torches weren't out. And you know, it's been such a great community to interact with. There is so much passion and there is so much knowledge around the game that when we were having those moments of like, what did we break? There'd invariably be, you know, a forum thread that would be like, here's the video I made, and I've broken down the play-by-play, and I've reverse engineered some of your code so I can tell you what to point at. Like, it's just, it's such an amazing community. So, you know, thanks to everyone that's here and who's helped us on this journey. Like, we love you, and we love this game, and we look forward to continuing to work on StarCraft.
Yeah.
I want to ask what's coming down the road for StarCraft Remastered, because I know it's not just one and done right now.
No, absolutely. Since the game launched, we've been patching, I think, once a week on average, which is quite an aggressive patch cadence. I'm going to slow down over BlizzCon because we're here at BlizzCon. But once we return, we'll get back into that for another couple of patches. We've got some more work to do on latency on the global matchmaker. There's a couple of things to roll out there. And, but after that, we're kind of going to go into a finalization mode of 1.21. And that patch for us is going to be very community focused and esports focused. I'm going to throw a bunch of acronyms at you now that only the very hardcore StarCraft players would know about. But EUD UMS maps, which means extended unit depth, use map settings, a certain type of map that players have been playing for many years. They tend to customize the game in a very different way. EUD was basically an exploit that was left in the original code from some of the engineers down here.
There's a feature left by the original engineers deliberately.
And it basically allows map makers to go in there and change anything in StarCraft. So, for example, there was a map made where someone recreated Super Mario Brothers, the whole game, inside one map in StarCraft. So you can do some pretty crazy things with this. Unfortunately, we had to leave it behind when we launched 1.18 because of the strong anti-cheat measures that we introduced for the matchmaker. But that kind of made us sad because we want people to enjoy StarCraft in whatever way they want to play it. So we're going to bring that back, and we already have now dozens of maps that are working correctly, including some of the most popular tower defense maps. And so that's something that we'll be rolling out soon. We'll never support all the maps. I don't think we'll ever support Super Mario Brothers inside StarCraft again. But there should be quite a lot of maps that we'll support. So that's something that's coming back. Another acronym is CCMU, cannot create more units. This is something that the players have been asking for years. There were some limits put into the original game to do with bullets and units and sprites, which made a lot of sense in 1998. Don't make so much sense in 2017.
And you could cheat in a way. You could play on a 256 by 256 map, fill it with pylons, and build Dark Archons. And then no one could make any units, and you just mind control them until they ran out of units.
That is true.
So if you had a free 2.5 hours, it's a really fun way to kill an epic.
Yeah, so that is that's something we'll be changing. It's not going to affect 1v1 matches because you never get that many units on the screen. But that's something we have a plan now to improve upon. And the final thing is ramps, double wide, north-facing ramps. These are things that if you play on the ladder or if you've watched competitive Pro StarCraft, you'll have seen that they put in these kind of wonky tiles, and they build these maps that are north-facing and double wide. And that's because it's better gameplay, but we never had native support for that. So we'll be adding native support and in HD for those ramps now.
Yeah. We created the ramps to go in all 8 cardinal directions now. So instead of just having a southeast and a southwest ramp, now you can go east, north, northeast, and all that. So we can have more balanced multiplayer maps without having to resort to the wonkiness that has been kind of implemented because there are no ramps.
Well, I'm sincerely really looking forward to it. And since we have exactly 50 seconds left, I want to swiftly go down and I want to hear your favorite cheese to do in StarCraft. Grant, what's your favorite cheese strategy?
I am known around the office for cloak race, getting to cloak race really quickly, and then destroying the workers of the opponent.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Pete?
I'm a very spiteful loser, so I just like flying my Terrans off in every direction.
That's excellent.
Just draw it out.
Where's the last farm?
Yeah.
Love it. Rob?
I just quit early.
Rage quit.
Ah, the cheesiest of all.
I don't have cheese. You know, I turtle as a Terran, so I just build up as much as I can around my base and just hope they come to me.
You're either cheesy or Flash.
That's right. That's right. Oh.
In a free-for-all, I would share vision with everybody and go attack Roman Kenny, who always cheats. So I would let everyone know where he's at.
Colin?
The classic Zergling rush.
Zergling Rush, yeah, I can't believe it took this far, the Zergling Rush.
It's a toss-up between towering someone in or Reaver dropping them.
Oh, the eternal debate.
Too elite.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. StarCraft Then and Now. Please play StarCraft Remastered. It's literally the best video game that's ever been made. And definitely come say hi after we hop off stage. Cheers.